All right, this is a talk that I gave at the Canadian Retina Society meeting in April of 2026. And it's a variation of a talk that I've given before, and it's about artificial intelligence, and it's things that you can use right now. These are my current disclosures. So I'm really talking about commercially available AI, and I've played with all of these. I've had subscription services to all of them, and over time, I've narrowed it down to three AI platforms that I really subscribe to and use frequently. Formerly, before the last month or so, I was using a lot of ChatGPT, but I found that there were more confabulations with ChatGPT, and I go back and forth between each of these. Switched over to Claude. I really like what Claude does. It's very logical, very well thought out, and it makes great visuals. And then Google Gemini, and I'm going to talk about Gemini, and I'm going to talk about Notebook LM. Now, I use Gemini a lot for creating images and other things such as that. I am a Gmail user, Google Drive user. And so Gemini is fairly powerful if you're someone who's a Google super user from that side of things. So I go back to 2021, and I remember coming into clinic, and one of my technicians said to me, "Have you seen this software that allows you to write anything out and it will create an image from it?" And that was Dolly. And I was absolutely blown away. As somebody who loves visual things, I think a lot of retina specialists love visual things and seeing things. And someone who's creative, I thought it was unbelievable. The images were a little weird, a little bit not great quality wise, but it was amazing to see what it could do. And just about a year or a year and a half later, we had ChatGPT that came from the same creators of Dolly. And that was frankly unbelievable. And I used it and just could not believe that we had something that could write so well. Fast forward, Notebook LM in mid 23. Didn't really think about Notebook LM at all. And that actually is a Google product. So Gemini came out after Notebook LM. And I thought that was unique. I played a little bit with Bard, that was their original AI, and it wasn't that great. I started to get involved with Claude in mid 2024, and it was good, but it always kind of played second fiddle to GPT until recently. Claude 4.5, 4.6, and now 4.7 is actually unbelievable. Interestingly, I upload some of my talks more and more to Notebook LM and ask them to remake the talk in a visually significant way. And this is that same slide that I uploaded to Notebook LM and it remade with this title. And it was a good looking slide, I have to say. So as we jump in here, we'll start with an introduction to AI, and then I'll talk about how I'm using AI clinically and to help with other things pertaining to ophthalmology and retina specifically. So this is the layout of the ChatGPT. You can start a new chat by clicking on the button to the upper left, and that will basically begin a new chat. It will archive your chats. You can work in projects, which allows ChatGPT to treat the chat in a certain way. And then down below, you can see your recents. Now, I want to point out this thing, Pulse. Pulse is really interesting. That is almost like a Google alert that lives within your ChatGPT, and you can program it to actually look at certain things. You can find Pulse, by the way, under the More tab as well. And basically, every week, it'll just find out about your interests, and it'll go and bring back any information as far as your interests are concerned. So I have it set up for some retina alerts, some private equity alerts, some alerts on sports and other things such as that. Now, this is Claude. Claude's put out by Anthropic, and very similar layout to what we see with ChatGPT. I don't think it has the Pulse type function where it goes and pulls alerts and whatnot, but it does have great integration with Google and Google Drive, Google Calendar, and Gmail. And I actually think it works a little better with some of the Google products than actually Gemini does. And last but certainly not least is Gemini, laid out very similarly. I really do like the image creation that we see within Gemini. So you can make some really fun images and some interesting images there. And an offspring of Gemini, and very tied to Gemini, is Notebook LM, which we'll talk about in just a bit. So how am I using this? Well, in the clinic, and I've been using this for several years, the ability to upload images. This is from ChatGPT. I do this in front of the patient since these are not basically going to keep your information isolated. I tell the patient, do you mind if I look this up with AI and see if AI agrees with the diagnosis? Then I'll simply take a picture of the screen and the image is on the screen of the computer, and right in front of the patient, I'll go ahead and upload it. I will crop out and de-identify the patient's name and pertinent information, and here's what you can see. I mean, this really amazingly pulls up this patient. I suspected that this patient may have AMN or PAM, and leaning a little bit more towards the PAM side of things. But you can see it actually tells you what you're seeing and gives a brief description and considers a diagnosis. So you can go a step further and you can ask the ChatGPT or the Claude to tell you more about PAM. And you can see it's amazing. It pulls up these great images. You can actually have it give you a complete outline, and it's almost as quick as Googling it, but it's going out to the web and it's pulling resources. You do need to check these resources. Now, what I like is that basically we can, we as retina specialists can kind of know and judge, but two things that are very important. Number one is what are you asking it, and how are you asking AI? I went one step further in this case, make a handout for a patient who has PAM, and we can see here, nice brief description, but it's kind of bland. So I said, all right, can you make a handout that's a little more visually appealing? And here's our logo and our company name, and can you apply this to it? And this is what ChatGPT did. You know, it's still not great. So I took this over to Claude, and I was shocked at how great Claude did. And in fact, Claude took this request and actually put our website, our phone number from our group at the bottom, and really did it in a really aesthetically pleasing way for a patient to be able to see and read. And I thought I was so impressed by this. I use AI, particularly ChatGPT, for translation. And how I use it in clinic for translation is I will tell ChatGPT to listen for any English and translate it to Spanish, and any Spanish translated to English if I have a Spanish-speaking patient. And all you have to do is have it on the active listening and conversational mode that's available. I use it with my iPhone, and I'll talk to the phone and then pause, and it will repeat whatever I said in Spanish. And then when the patient talks, it will listen to the patient and translate it to English, and it will actually create a transcription of our conversation, which is great. I use Claude. I used ChatGPT for a while, but I use Claude for case creation. Now, be aware this is not HIPAA compliant, so you want to avoid putting in any personal patient medical information or identifying patient information. But I'll basically just transcribe verbally into the Claude app on my phone a bit of the patient history. You can see multiple misspellings here, but it gets it right. Interestingly, I asked this incorrectly to create a slide of this patient that received a steroid injection and had a significant improvement in their edema. And it took me literally, it made a single slide. And what I thought was amazing is it took so much great information and put it onto a slide in such an aesthetically pleasing way. I was very impressed with this. And so I've used Claude to make a variety of different presentations and case reports. You do have to tell it that you want to omit any pertinent patient medical information and keep it HIPAA compliant. All of these are great for reviewing contracts. I've uploaded PDFs of employment contracts and had it review contracts, and the best thing is you can interact with it. You can ask it questions about the contract, and you can go back to the conversation and say, you know, hey, remind me again, what's the term of this contract, or how much am I getting paid for this, whatever you're doing? And it will basically review it for you, and you can ask it to act basically like a legal consultant and say, you know, what could I recommend as far as improving this contract? It is fantastic for reviewing papers and literature. And I'm asked on occasion to review papers for publication, and I always review them first And then I run the review through AI, and I'm always humbled because the AI does such a better job with basically the nuances of the publication and some of the limitations, and so it makes me kind of rethink my review and add things to my review. It's great at breaking down papers. Here's the Light Sight 3 study, and I asked it to just give me the basics of this study, including the conclusion. And you can see it just did a very nice job of summarizing the study in a very easy to understand way. And you can then take it a little step further. And I said, hey, can you critique this paper based off science? And is it scientifically sound? And you can see on the left-hand side are the strengths of the study. And here are some of the areas for improvement and potential limitations. And it's funny that it came up with several more limitations of the study than it actually did the strengths of the study. We were looking at maybe make a conversion from betadine to chlorhexidine. I asked it to summarize all of the major papers. And we can see here, make a table of those summaries, and it really did a great job. It's fantastic at summarizing data. And I'll tell you, if you want to create data in a visually stunning way, Claude is certainly better right now than ChatGPT. One of the things I asked Claude was to show me geographic atrophy data graphically over the years in the United States. And here you can see by brand and by product the differences in uptake of the GA products comparing Izervay to Syfovre. And I thought this was great. Any one of these graphs would be fantastic to put into a talk. I love it for trips and for scheduling. So I'll upload meeting outlines and PDFs, flight itineraries into Claude. I'll put them all into the same conversation, and I'll say, hey, make me a trip agenda. And here you can kind of see it's just really nicely summarized my trip plans and my travel plans. When I was going to the meeting, I wanted to know where we were staying, and I asked it to give me some things that I could do and see around the hotel that we were at. And you can see here it gave me a nice map, gave me some things to walk to and whatnot, which I thought was really nice and fantastic. In the last little bit of this, I'd like to talk about a Google product, Notebook LM, and there are several things that I really like Notebook LM for. So this is the overview to Notebook LM. It is different than Google Gemini. It may eventually end up integrated into Google Gemini, but for now, it's its own standalone entity. And what's great about Notebook LM is you can control what it has access to, either websites, files you upload. You can upload PowerPoints, PDFs. You can reference videos, websites, Google Drive things, and even text. And so you can basically limit it for what it's looking at. So here I wanted to search on the web for photobiomodulations for macular degeneration. You can go through and check what you want to keep. And what you want to reject. You can upload any kind of PDFs of research and whatnot, which I did. And then you can use the studio portion where you can create things like an audio overview, a PowerPoint slide deck, a mind map, infographics, and whatnot. So here we can see once you've uploaded all the papers and all of the websites that you're interested in, it'll give you a brief summary. You can start to type and ask it questions about the information you've uploaded. It uses AI to analyze that. So you're not actually getting a lot of input from sources that you're not sure about or that you don't know where it came from. Now, the real power, though, is when you start to use things on the right side, the studio. The audio overview creates about a 10 to 15-minute podcast that you can actually interrupt and interact with. It's absolutely fantastic and interesting that it can do such a great job. But I really love the slide deck feature. But let me just show you here the mind map. So here's the mind map of this, and I'll just play this video. You can actually interactively open these different parts of the mind map and scroll through, which is really kind of neat if you're a mind mapping sort of person. I wish that sometimes if you clicked on some of these parts of the map, it would pull up more information. But this is just the single page infographic that it can make. It's really stunning visually. It creates all of this de novo from the information you've uploaded it. It's maybe a little bit, I don't want to say childish, but a little bit refined, non-scientific. It's something to be nice, I guess, for a patient to be able to look at. But it's not quite anything that I would integrate into one of my slides or talks. Now, speaking of slides or talks, I do love taking a finished talk, and I will upload the talk and the slides into Notebook LM, and I'll ask it to rework the talk and rework the slides in a visually compelling way, and I'll tell it to keep the colors and the fonts the same. And you can see here it took these 4 slides that I created, and it actually combined some of the data and really made it, I think, very stunning, and combined the data in a unique way that looks very professional and really nice. Now, in that same talk, this is a talk on what's happening in U.S. Healthcare and U.S. retina in particular. It actually created de novo this slide, which I think is absolutely amazing. It took the context of the talk, it saw what I was getting at, and it created this whole vicious cycle slide, which is amazing. I mean, for it to be able to think on its own. But you need to beware because there are confabulations. And in fact, I uploaded this talk to Notebook LM and asked it to remake this talk. This is the title slide, and it came up with Heather Francis's email or Gmail as part of my title slide, and she wasn't involved with the talk or the conference or anything such as that. Also, this was the summary slide, and it's decent. It's a fair summary slide. Probably not how I would consider the main learnings, but it included perplexity and grok, which I didn't really talk about in this as having strengths in these certain areas. This was another summary slide that it created, which I think is nice and visually compelling. But I really like to summarize this talk with a friend of mine's quote. I had him on a podcast, Asin Rahimi, and we talked about AI, and I thought he said something that still to this day sticks with me, which is AI won't replace people, but people who know how to use AI will replace those who don't. And I think this is very true, that AI is going to help us do things more efficiently. It will help us analyze data better, obviously be aware of confabulations, but it's something that is a tool that can definitely make us more efficient and better at what we do. Thank you so much for listening.